Hi, my name is Tricia Yates and I'm a certified Art2Ride Associate Trainer, and this is my yearly update video of my young horse Delilah. And this video was taken back in May at an Art2Ride clinic that I took with Karen, who is right there in the center of the screen. And I had originally debated whether or not to use this video because it's not exactly us at our finest, but it definitely really highlights some of the challenges that I was having with this mare, and therefore will hopefully show better her development through the stages of training, and also hopefully help somebody else out there who may be having some of the same issues. So Delilah is a little over 5 years old in this video, and I had purchased her as a 3.5-year-old completely unbroke green horse. And I chose to do that because I wanted a clean slate. I wanted a horse that I didn't have to take the time to undo prior bad training, or have to deal with a horse that may be broken over at the neck. And I was thinking in doing that I would have a much easier time with this style of training. And right there, I just realized I'd forgotten my helmet, so my friend went and got it. Delilah has turned out to be rather a challenge. She's a very, very headstrong horse, very, very strong-willed. And to quote Karen Loshbaugh, she's complicated. So my job was not as easy as I originally thought it was going to be, but we do all learn from the challenges that our horses give us. So one of the things that Karen had noticed right off the bat was, although my horse knows how to stretch, when she goes down into the stretch, she wasn't softening down into the stretch as such. And she is having a hard time accepting contact. So she put her head down into the stretch, but when I went to try and bring her up into a working frame, she would get racy and struggle with that contact and not quite come through to it. So you can see Karen is having me work her in a working frame to try and start to deal with that. And you can see what she does is when I take contact, she starts to brace and lift her head and try and duck out of the contact and be strong. So what I am trying to do is use passive resistance when she does that. So I'm not pulling back, but I'm also not giving. And I'm trying to wait for her to get soft before I release or give. And you will also see me at times bringing my shoulders back. And what I'm trying to do when you see that is lighten my seat, use my body weight to try and help her rebalance and step under herself a little better with her hind end, as opposed to letting that energy just run out of the front. And you'll see I ask her to soften, and she'll bring her nose in, and then she, as soon as I go to give, she wants to kind of snap her nose back out like a rubber band. So I'm trying to teach her here to hold and maintain a soft contact. And you see she has moments of it where it gets better, like right there. It starts to get a little better. And then she gets a little distracted or gets a little quick in her step. The other thing to note is this clinic was not at the facility that we board. So I had actually trailered her out to do the clinic, and it was probably only around the fourth time that she had been trailered out and ridden off the property. So that definitely exaggerated the issues that we'd been having. I think that was creating a lot more tension in her, the quickness in her stride, the more distracted than we usually are at home, I think was to do with that. So here you'll see I'm asking her to leg yield, and she's a little overbent, and she's rushing a little and running out on that outside shoulder, not being as balanced as she could be. So to try and fix that, I'm going to use my outside rein to try and slow that shoulder down a little and also not allow her to overbend quite so much. And that one is a little better. She's still leading a little more with her shoulders than I would like and not being quite as balanced. But she wasn't quite as overbent that time. And you see at times she gets a little tense and kind of jogs up. Again, running out a little on that outside shoulder. So I'm going to ask her to go forward a couple of strides to try and straighten her out a little, and then add the inside leg and continue leg yielding. And she gets a little jiggy. So I'm going to try one more time for that leg yield. And that one looked a little better. Still a little quick in her stride, but getting better. And there you see her kind of running up into that little jog. And that's, I think, tension and a little nervousness about being in the new place. And what we want in the leg yield is for the angle of the head and neck to match the angle of the shoulders. So we don't want them to kind of disconnect and overbend. In order to stay balanced, those angles need to match, which right there in that last little bit you see they didn't. And she started to run up into that jog as opposed to moving off my leg. She was jogging forward. And so we're going to put it down into the stretch and see if we can get it to relax again. And when I put it down into the stretch, I'm trying to do it gradually, softening her jaw and giving a little and softening her jaw, giving a little, as opposed to just letting her root all the way down into the stretch, which she was a little prone to doing. We want them to maintain that light, soft contact even in the stretch. You know, we want them to come through to that contact. And so that's what I'm trying to teach her by not just letting her drop her nose automatically all the way down into that stretch. We want the horse to feel like they're on the bit, even down in that stretch. And again, right there, you see she gets distracted by something on the outside of the arena. So we've just got to keep asking her to stay steady. And you can see there when I pick the contact back up to put her in the working frame, you know, she kind of braces and bobs her head. She's not consistent or steady in that contact yet. So I'm just trying to use passive resistance to get her to understand what I'm asking. So what I'm doing is setting my hands and not giving when she braces, but also not pulling back. Just as I said, using that passive resistance until she starts to soften a little bit. And if she tries to bring her head up to avoid that contact, my hands have to come up and follow that, so I keep the same amount of contact on. She doesn't learn to avoid that contact by lifting her head up or snapping her nose behind the vertical. And then putting that release in right when she softens. And there I asked for a couple of strides of leg yield, which weren't too bad. And then taking her back down into the stretch again, getting her to relax. And you see when she stretches down the strides just ever so slightly slower and deeper. It's still a hair quick. Bring her back up into that working frame. And I was about to ask her to leg yield, and instead of moving over from that contact, she kind of ran up into that jog. So we're just going to stay patient and ask again. And there she starts stepping over a little better, not just running forward from the pressure of my leg. She's still not stepping quite as deeply as I would like, but there is a little improvement to the last time. And here she starts to step much deeper. That starts to look a lot better. There, that one was much better. I'm much happier with that one. And again, back down into the stretch. We keep coming back to that stretch to try and encourage her to relax. And there, even asking for a couple of steps in a more stretched frame. The first couple of steps she starts to do that, and then you'll see she goes back to trying to bring her head up and be a little distracted by something outside the arena. And here you'll see the quality of the walk looks a little better. She's slowed down a little bit, the strides are a little deeper, taking a little more weight behind, not as rushed, and a little more consistent in the rhythm. And she was struggling with that throughout this lesson. We would start to get something good, and we'd get a few strides, and then she'd kind of start to go fast again. And so just really working on trying to get consistency. She's looking a little better here. Also, the length of time that she's holding the stretch and holding the frame without running up into the jog or or being distracted is starting to get better. Her brain is starting to get into the game. She's been a little less reactive to things going on outside the arena.
Nice now. Let's see what happens when you bring her up. Much better, huh? Yeah. Now, you guys all see what we're talking about, that being better? Yeah, no? Don't be shy. Speak up. This is all for training. So I don't know if you noticed before when she brought the horse up, it was pulling. Every time she gave, the horse took back like a rubber band, right? It wasn't just coming through and staying soft into the contact like we want. But it's a young horse. She's only 5, right? So we ask for a lot. We're happy with a little. Horse can only be capable of doing so much. Kind of its brain was stopping it before.
And when I'm picking her up and putting her into the working frame, the hope is that the movement doesn't change. She stays over her back, swinging nicely, stepping deeply. But you can see at this point at times when I pick her up, it does change the gait a little bit. She loses a little bit of the quality of the walk at this point still. It's better than it was in the beginning, but it's still not quite there. And we're just playing with it to see if we can help that get better. And so when I feel like I've gotten something good, her reward is getting to go back down into the stretch, which will in turn get the quality of the step better, kind of fix it, get her swinging again, and then repeat. Pick her back up into the working frame and see if she can maintain that through the working frame. And I think the problem here is more mental than physical. She is pretty strong in her back, and Karen had commented on that, and that she is ready to come up. But a lot of it is her temperament and her mental state, more so than her physical state. I feel like each time you see her go down into the stretch now, it's looking a little better. And in the working frame now, as she comes past the camera, you'll see that my reins are looking a little softer. There's a little flutter in the reins at times, so she's not racing. She's starting to think about holding that soft contact, which is what we are hoping for. And overall, it's a lot better than it was at the start of the lesson. Still not where I would like it to be, and she actually looks a little better than she was feeling this day. And as she goes down into the stretch now, it doesn't look as forced, like she's throwing her head down. It's all starting to look softer. So I'm actually really happy with the walk in the stretch now. Just hoping to get the working frame just that little better. And sometimes that's all you can hope for. She's not going to get where I want her in 1 hour, but as long as she gets a little better, then I am happy with that. You see, it's just a lot of repetition of the same thing to try and teach her the understanding of what we want and what we expect from her.
We lost a little bit of that looseness, right? Not a lot, but a little bit. So you might try letting the pole go a little bit lower, see if it gets a little bit better, right?
Another thing to note in the working frame now, when she comes up, she's not throwing her head as high, she's keeping her pole a little lower. I think that's because she's more relaxed. And with that lower pole, that more relaxation, is coming better steps with her hind end. Her feet aren't stabbing the ground like they were in the beginning when she was very tense. She's taken softer, deeper steps than she was before. She's not hollowing her back out as much when she snaps her head up. And here we go up into the trot, and she looks like she's off to the races. So this is too quick. She hits that downward slope right there, and she really starts to speed up. So rather than pull on her and try and pull her back to slow her down, I'm just going to put her on a smaller circle, which makes her have to work harder, and hopefully in turn will help her slow down a little bit. And then right then I tried to put my inside leg on her and get her to step over, and you saw instead of stepping over, she just started to rush and go forward. So I'm putting her back on the smaller circle to see if that will help her calm down and slow down without me having to pull on the reins. It just makes it a little harder for her. And then, as you see, she started to slow down, so I'm going to put her back on a bigger area. Excuse me. And the trot's still a little quick. And I know that each time she makes this little downward slope, she has the tendency to speed up. So you see me using my shoulders there to try and rebalance and help her slow down. And there again. It's almost like a half halt without pulling on the reins. You're using your body weight, your shoulder weight to help. And again there, and you saw that time she did slow down. She starts to speed back up again, so I do it again. She slowed down, so then I put her back down in the stretch, and things start to look a little better. See, she has a little more swing in her trot in the stretch. And she's starting to get a little more consistent with the rhythm again. She does pick up speed coming down that downward slope, and you see me using my shoulders to help with that. But on the whole, this is starting to look a lot nicer. She's starting to use herself a lot better. And maintain more relaxation too.
What happens if you lean forward on a horse? Yeah. Right? So we use the shoulder weight to say, our shoulders are back here, step under. Support us back here.
And the other thing I don't think I've talked about yet is you see me picking my hands up at times. So when her head comes up, I'm trying to keep the same amount of contact. So as her head comes up, my hands come up to try and keep working that bit on the soft part of her mouth, especially with a horse like this that is prone to bracing. If I were to bring my hands down, I think she would just brace off the bars of her jaw. Whereas by lifting my hands up and keeping the bit working on the softer part of her mouth, she's more inclined to soften with that. So that's why at times you see my hands lifting. It's to follow as her head comes up.
Now doesn't that just look more beautiful? I mean, we don't even need to know that much. The neophyte can tell.
Right there. See head starts to come up, my hands
So
come up
did I
with it.
explain that correctly?
As the head goes down, my hands come together and down.
Good job, Chris. Very nice. You got distracted?
She got a little distracted again there, a little bobble.
Now bring her up. Yeah, every time you come to that downhill spot, just help her out.
Here we pick her up. I'm picking her up into the working frame. She started to speed up. Use my shoulders to slow her down a little bit. She's just struggling to find that consistent rhythm. Hopefully it starts to get better.
Try to go half like, whoa, darling.
And we're not keeping her in the working frame as long, or for as long as a period in the trot as we were in the walk, because she doesn't have the strength in her back to maintain long periods of the working frame in the trot yet. So we do it for a little and then put her back down into the stretch. You'll see each time when she goes down in the stretch, the trot gets a little better. And here I'm transitioning down into the walk, really trying to use my posting lower and closer to the saddle until she comes down into that transition. You know, I don't just want to sit heavy on her back, especially not with a young horse with a developing back. So I'm trying to be really mindful of that and use my posting to help. Anyhow, this has been my video of my young horse Delilah. I'm hopefully going to follow it up soon with a more current video, and I hope it helped. Again, I'm Tricia Yates, Art2Ride Associate Trainer.